When I was 16, 17, went to a summer camp for bright, precocious teenagers who were like into kind of counterculture at the time, pre-hippie era. Made some films there, or at least one film got like a huge reaction, and somebody there suggested, well, don't you want to get into the movies? And it somehow had never occurred to me before, despite my interest in it. And then went to college, and basically I made connections there, and one of those people had a friend who became associate producer on Dark Star, so that leads into the connection with John Carpenter. We flew in to a hotel near LAX airport, and John came down and met us. He had a script called Eyes, which was a terrific little high-concept, low-budget movie at that point. Probably know this movie if you know John's history as Eyes of Laura Mars, because through his connection with Jack H. Harris, Dark Star, earlier The Blob, all those films, Jack H. Harris brought it to Barbra Streisand and John Peters. Now how this happened, I have no idea. They wanted to do a horror film for Barbra Streisand. They bought it from John. And my father, who wanted to put money in the film, seeing this, thought, this guy's going places. So this contact that I mentioned just previously, the person that had been associate producer on Dark Star, whose name was J.S. Kaplan, his family and my family wanted to put money in a film. And we kind of then said, okay, we can't do Eyes. How about two $100,000 features? So that was the initial idea. There was no script whatsoever, nothing. And then we made a deal with John. I came out here to the LA area, and John was writing the script for Assault on Precinct 13, but under the title Anderson Alamo. And that was what wound up being shot virtually word for word. There was hardly any changes from that initial script. However, when we budgeted the script, it came up to about $200,000 or thereabouts, maybe a little more. And we figured, okay, this 2 movies for $100,000 is absolutely not going to work. Now, everybody thinks it costs $100,000. That's what John says. I went back to our ledger, knowing I had this interview to do, sort of did a quick add up on what it cost, and it came to somewhere in the $220,000. I didn't get to recheck my math on it. This is a very rough figure. It's about $200,000. So I don't understand people saying it only cost $100,000, because I don't think you can look at that movie and say that's $100,000. This is part of the print the legend thing. If you want to print the legend, say the movie cost $100,000, that's totally fine with me, but that's not what it actually cost. It actually cost somewhere 200 or 200 a little plus.
W20. So how's it going so far, Lieutenant?
1W90, okay. Seeing as I've been on the job exactly 4 minutes.
What we did with getting the actors was we just sent out a proposal to agents. We need these characters, these characters, these characters. We didn't have any preconceived notions as to who would be in it. We got submissions. We got Claudia Jennings, who was the star of Gator Bait and the Roller movies, and was this tremendous kind of B-movie presence. Austin Stoker, I think he submitted, but he may have been directly through Darwin Jostin, who was the main lead criminal. Darwin Jostin lived catty-corner to John off of Beechwood Drive in the Hollywood area, and John wrote that script for Darwin. So I think those two came that way. You can see echoes of Snake Plissken in the character in Assault. I have to say that his Snake Plissken character predated Assault, because he had a script called The Escape from New York City that was about 1974, so that predated Assault. But he kind of modified it a little bit for Darwin.
I'm Lieutenant Bishop.
Yes, sir. One moment, I'll tell the captain you're here.
And I have to say, the one time that metaphorically, not literally, but metaphorically, I saw John jumping for joy was when Henry Brandon came in. Henry Brandon had played Scar in The Searchers, so it was one of the absolute most important films for John Carpenter was The Searchers. And here was the guy who had been Scar, the Indian chief, in The Searchers. He was immediately, put in the front to be hired.
I'll call Ellendale on the two-way in my car.
The interiors were shot at a place called Producer's Studio, which now is called Raleigh Studios, but it at the time was a little place that had been part of RKO. It actually wasn't so little. I understand that The Informer was shot there. The Pit and the Pendulum set was there for Roger Corman. The station house is a combination of old police station in Venice, which at that point in real life was a art center and poetry center called Beyond Baroque. It's very famous in the LA area, but that was the Venice police station. And then the design of the Venice police station was used for our sets, but larger in the sets than in real life. So if you would walk out that door in the film and look left and right, in the film you're seeing Watts as opposed to Venice. And if you look across the street, you're seeing Studio City. A parking lot, a park and ride. Miraculously, they let us close down Ventura Boulevard, which is one of the most heavily traveled streets, to get our shots across the street for all the scenes in the parking lot with the gang members. So those are the basic assault locations. This may have been a low-budget film, but everybody took it 100% seriously. There was not a person on there who wasn't completely committed to making this work. John had the benefit of the USC program, so he basically did every single job that you could do on a movie as part of his education in the USC Cinema School. So he was really experienced top to bottom. So if you say somebody thinking, oh, he must have not had very much experience, I say he had a tremendous amount of experience from his tenure at USC. And he also had a very a powerful, innate kind of self-confidence that was his weapon against all the difficulties that would arise in a production. So he was absolutely in control all the time without being overbearing in any way. He was like really in charge. And I have to say that one other person who really helped there was a production manager named John Sergimaki, who kept the physical aspects of the production in place and rolling along. So Deborah Hill came on. She came from Haddonfield, New Jersey, which obviously got funneled into being Haddonfield, Illinois in Halloween. She was our script supervisor and our assistant editor. And she was a very kind of serious, no-nonsense kind of person. And John obviously saw in her somebody with a lot of skill. They teamed up, and then they wound up writing and producing, directing Halloween together. And did several films together, The Fog and maybe one or two more, Escape from New York. And she went on and did a number of mainstream films and had a pretty good career up until I think she got sick at a certain point and then had to step back from the business and unfortunately is no longer with us. It's a very ambitious film for the budget. It's got a large cast, and I find it more ambitious than Halloween on a technical level. Just because there's so much in the way of staging that goes on, and things blowing up, and different locations, and all the kind of things I think they could try to keep more self-contained on Halloween to keep costs down. This one was a bit more free-ranging, and I really credit also Doug Knapp, the director of photography, for making it look as good as it does. I think it looks tremendous for what it cost. The anecdotes from the production I might have to offer all have to do with the rigors of the production and the necessity to keep on schedule. So for instance, we shot right through our Thanksgiving holiday. So we shot on Thanksgiving. There was one day that ran about 24 hours or so. It was just an all-day shoot. It was the scenes in the cells in the police station, all the stuff in there with the gang members and everything. That was about a 24-hour shoot, and it was powerfully exhausting to shoot for that long. And the one other thing that comes to mind is a terrible cold snap that took place. So when we're shooting the death of Frank Doubleday, it was in the 30s while we were shooting that, and that's very, very unusual for the LA area. It was absolutely freezing. I don't know how he managed it in his t-shirt to shoot. The one mishap that happened was the prisoners are running out of the station and they're squibbed for when they're shot. The guys who are running out had little triggers to trigger the squibs themselves, manually trigger them. And one guy had his hand up like this, and the squib went off and injured his arm. Moderately seriously. It wasn't a hospitalization level of injury, but that was the one injury that happened on the film.
Can I get an ice cream?
It's late, sweetheart, I'm closed.
One other thing that did went wrong, but we were able to fix it with a reshoot the next day, was shooting the little girl with the ice cream cone. Because the ice cream cone had a thing to blow a hole in the front for the bullet in the front, and then to blow the thing through the back. So she didn't actually have a squib on her for safety's sake. It was like a mechanical thing with a hidden hose. And that didn't work the first time. We had to regroup and reshoot that scene. People ask, was that ever something we really wrapped our heads around the ramifications of? And the answer is no. We, as 20-somethings, had an instinctive desire to be transgressive at some point or other. I think most 20-somethings are like that. It didn't really run past our brains that, let's think about this a little bit. We just went and shot it, then we put it in the movie, submitted to the MPAA. We had been expecting to get a PG rating. At the time, there was no PG-13. We thought, okay, this will be a PG, and it came back with an X rating because of that scene, and they wanted us to trim that sequence out. And I can tell you that would have been very, very awkward, disruptive. And our distributor said, oh, just put it out. Roger Corman does that kind of thing. He submits a print to the MPAA, has the cuts in it, they approve it. So then the film went out as is, and there's never been a single complaint with its R rating. It's been appropriate to everybody. Nobody's gotten too upset with it. But I think John did an interview once. He said, okay, I watched that movie again recently, and that was pretty harsh. I wouldn't necessarily do it the same way now. And I sort of have to feel the same way about it in a way, because you see movies where people are very cavalier about serious things that could be serious. I have to say, at the time, there was not the history that there is now of small kids being shot during gang wars, that a bullet goes through a window and kills a kid. You weren't really seeing the headlines about that now. So it had more of a fantasy thing. It was something to show that those guys, those are real villains. You know, if they're going to do that, you know, all bets are off the table. That was more what we were thinking of if we thought at all about that scene. And I'll have some second thoughts about it now. But that's at the time, no, we didn't have any second thoughts about it. I don't think even we really talked about it much at all. It was not a part of the contract for John Carpenter to score the film. He basically volunteered to do it at one point as a budgetary matter. It had not been even something that was particularly talked about ahead of his offer to do it. And then he went in and very, very quickly, I don't remember how long, recorded it at a place that was run by a guy named Dan Wyman. There were analog synthesizers there that had to be manually tuned, and there was a piano, and John performed the score, and I don't think it ran more than 1 to 2 days to record that score.
You're pretty fancy, Wilson. I have moments.
We were syncing dailies in my apartment. So we have a one-bedroom apartment. We've got a guy named Kurt Schulke, whose name I still see in the movie credits, syncing our dailies. We had a screen set up and a projector with an anamorphic lens showing our dailies in my apartment. So we saw that, then we saw it on the Moviola, and we were screening stuff at Samuel Goldwyn, the little Samuel Goldwyn place near Formosa and Santa Monica. And I remember one time carrying a Titanic reel of film like this, and there's a little screening room there, and Jack Nicholson walks by looking very, very stoned, ready to see Missouri Breaks with Arthur Penn. So we were working there for quite some time editing the movie, and then we probably saw it all assembled there. And here it is as we talk, 40 years after it came out, and it's still percolating away.